Hi, Ali. Welcome aboard. Oh, Thomas. Suzanne. Susanna, sorry. We'll get to that, Ali. We'll get to the outcome of the Supreme Court ruling this morning towards the end of the programme. Try and remember, folks, that today, the programme I do is a news review programme. You'll also notice that this morning I've changed the name of my news review programme from Indie Truck Davy News Review to Indie Truck Davy News Review from the colony of Scotland. But we'll get to that. Okay. First, we have to go through the review programme as normal. And at the end, I will break down the pish that came for the Supreme Court judges. And, of course, the trick and the stunt that was pulled by Labour and walked right into by Mr. Salmon. But we'll get to that. Okay. Right, here we go. Right. Good morning, folks. Indie Truck Davy out the truck and at home in his office in Salisbury, North Lanarkshire, where it is overcast, gloomy as hell, and quick look, because I forgot to do it before I come on, and it's 5 degrees. There you have it. Overcast, 5 degrees, dry at the moment. That's the weather forecast for Salisbury, North Lanarkshire. If you want to know what the weather's like with you, look at your rain, bloody windy. Right, review of the news from the colony of Scotland for Tuesday, the 22nd of the 11th, 2022. Tuesday started with two main themes in the rags. One, an out-and-out lie and propaganda created by BBC Scotland to mislead the people of Scotland. NHS to charge more wealthy people for services. That's all crap, of course, but a lie's halfway around the world before the truth has got its boots on. But in this case, the truth caught the lie. That doesn't happen very often. The story was concocted out of nothing. No policy makers were involved in the crap coming out of the BBC, and the First Minister had to give a strong rebuttal because some middle manager somewhere suggested that we should maybe charge the wealthy a wee bit more for use of NHS services. Here's the kicker, kids. The wealthy don't use NHS services. The wealthy have private medical insurance. Top-rated private medical insurance. A bit like Mr. Sunak and his 250 quid for a half-hour consultation face-to-face with his GP. Okay, right, the other headline in the English right-wing gammon rags printed here in Scotland. Demand that the Scottish Government shake a magic money tree that we don't have to fund public services. Now, the right-wing rags are trying to blame funding problems on the Scottish Government. Unfortunately for the gammon rags, only their limited intelligence, knuckle-dragging readers would believe such pish. The rest of us know that the Scottish Government has a fixed budget which has not been adjusted for inflation, inflationary pressures and other problems in the economy created by Westminster's incompetence. There you go. Right, moving on Tuesday, and the day starts with the news that the new cabinet in the House of Thieves and Carpetbaggers has been holding kitty cobra meetings on potential for civil unrest this winter. Pressures on the NHS, scheduled power outages and public sector pay strikes are getting the government down that road nervous. So they've been holding cobra meetings expecting civil unrest. When you can't feed your kids, you can't eat the lights on, when there's power cuts, when you don't have enough money and you're having to go and strike to try and get an inflation busting price settlement, when your mortgage rates went through the bloody roof because of the Westminster incompetence, and as I say, most importantly, you can't feed your kids and grannies did because she froze or died of malnutrition. That will lead to civil unrest, so they're already planning for it down that road. Cobra meetings with the new cabinet have been taking place to deal with it. Right, moving on Tuesday, and here in Scotland, the latest crime figures are out. Crime now lower than in 2018. Violent crime up a little, sexual offences up a little, but generally sexual offences or historic offences being reported now that the shame's been lifted. Right, but that's no good that the top two are up, the worst two are up, violent crime and sexual crime, right? Record crime down to levels last seen, recorded crime down to levels last seen in 1974. So, crime's down 3% across the board. The cuckoos in the nest are not happy. So they pick on the figures which have risen and say that the SNP government has cooked the books. Justice Secretary Keith Brown says the figures show Scotland's communities are safe places to live. I tend to agree with that. Right, moving on, Tuesday, the EIS union here in Scotland knocked back the latest 6.5% pay offer from COSLA. So strike action this Thursday to go ahead. Now this segment is for a friend of mine who's a teacher who thinks that I've been having a bit of a go at teaching assistants and teachers, classroom assistants and teachers, because I point out the obvious. So I'm going to point out the obvious again now. Everybody in the public sector, right across the public sector, whether you be a cleaner, a binman, whether you be a nurse, a doctor, a teacher, a classroom assistant, a janitor, they all deserve pay rises which will let them cope with the cost of living crisis. But the fact is, the Scottish Government has a fixed budget. It hasn't been adjusted for inflationary pressures. Therefore, throw in rising costs of energy as well. There isn't more money in the kitty. Teachers are just as valuable or invaluable as anybody else in the public sector. The public sector does a fantastic job. But there's no more money in the pot. The reality is, the Scottish Government will come up with money to use demand. But Davy's just pointing at the reality. That teaching assistant that's in the classroom now, job's gone. Need to have a teacher to teach kids. Teaching assistant would be brilliant to help them get along, but you don't need that teaching assistant. So their job's going to go to private teachers. Janitorial staff. You run a school and one less Janny, one less cleaner. Might not be as clean and hygienic, and things might not function as well. But ancillary staff will also be sacked to pay for the pay rises that are required in the public sector. When there is no more money in the pot, and you're stretched to the limit, you can't give unless you reduce your outgoings. And the way it's done in business, whether it be in the public or private sector, is you get rid of staff. Public services will suffer, but the people left in the public services will get the money they demand. So to my friends who's a teacher who thinks I'm telling them to take a pay cut, I'm not telling you to take a pay cut at all. I'm just being realistic here. There isn't a magic money tree in Scotland. None. We can't order the Bank of England to give us money the way that Westminster can. And as we all know, there's no such thing as a national debt because you owe the money to yourself. But we don't have that option. So I understand that everybody in the public sector deserves and should have an inflation level or busting pay rise in order to be able to cope with the cost of living crisis. The average pay rise in the private sector is allegedly 6%. Don't see it myself. Okay, let's move on. So, to my teacher friend, I'm sorry again. I really am. I know that the Scottish Government will come up with a pay arrangement that you can agree with, but kiss your teaching assistant and your Johnny goodbye. Right, moving on, Tuesday. And it turns out minimum unit pricing for alcohol works. Now in the 3 years since it was introduced, sales of alcohol down, alcohol consumption down Sales of ciders and perry is down, and sales of wine up. The Professor Lucy of Glasgow Uni said the study was conducted in such a way to be positive that the decline in alcohol consumption per adult in Scotland is related to minimum unit pricing and not other factors. The other factors, of course, being the fact that we've all been living on 20% less. If you're on furlough, you're only 8% of your wages, and now we're in an economic recession, so people have got less money. But what the university who did the study said is the study was conducted in such a way to make sure that it wasn't the other things that were affecting the amount of drink that people are consuming. It was, of course, a minimum unit pricing. So it turns out the cuckoos and the nest were rang, and the Scottish Government was right. Minimum unit pricing is working. But Scotland's about to dry up anyway. So is England and Wales, actually. All our relationships with alcohol are going to change. Nobody's going to be able to afford the bloody drink. Right, moving on Tuesday in Dundat Road, Red Tory leader Sir Comrade Starmer tells the CBI members that they must wean themselves off cheap migrant labour. They must also upskill the UK workforce. He promises to meet their short-term demands for immigration in 2 years' time. If he gets elected. Brilliant. Anyway, by that time, a lot of these businesses will have went under. That won't matter so much. There will be people fighting for jobs. Anyway, Starmer promised his party would be the party of business, but business must stop paying poverty pay and improve conditions. And that's crap coming from Labour. Labour are the ones that introduced poverty pay. And if you can't get your head wrapped around that, just think working tax credits. They taxed us to pay the poorest amongst us, letting the corporations and big business off the need to pay a living wage. But the duplicity of Labour is about to become a bit more stark here in Scotland when Davy gets to the Supreme Court judgment. All right, anyway, I was absolutely gobsmacked watching Starmer yesterday. It wasn't like watching a Labour leader address business. It was like watching a Tory address business. And I suppose that's about right. He is a red Tory. And he will betray the workforce the way that Tony Blair betrayed the workforce by making the middle classes make up the wage shortfalls of the lower classes in the form of tax credits. Right, moving on Tuesday. And disgraced ex-Tory MP Owen Paterson to take the UK government to the European Court of Human Rights over Standards Committee verdict that he broke lobbying rules. Mr. Paterson claims the inquiry into him was unfair. Now, folks, this one's pure comedy gold. Owen Paterson was an arch Brexiteer and he advocated leaving the UK pulling out of the European Court of Human Rights. And now he's taken his own party and the government he was part of, to the European Court of Human Rights. Him being labelled a paid lobbyist and having to subsequently lose his job. You could not make this up. A wee bit of comedy gold, man. Right, moving on Tuesday down that road, and another Tory rebellion against its own governing party is underway. This time 47 MPs come together and pen a letter saying they won't support targets on housing and the Levelling Up Bill. Okay. Now Downing Street says, so basically, in the Levelling Up Bill, there's mandatory targets for house construction down that road in England. They've got to get a target of 300,000 new homes built each year. But I mean, Downing Street then comes out and says, to try and quell the rebellion, that Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Minister and Housing Minister, will meet these 47 MPs and try and sort this out, and the bill will be kicked into the long grass for a wee bit to sort the situation out. But what's interesting about it is number 10 says it's committed to the 300,000 houses a year some figure that's in the Levelling Up Bill. I remember the previous Tory government pledging to build 200,000 houses a year. Do you know how many they managed to build? Zero. They one of the Tory MPs don't want mandatory targets. Oh, mental. Moving on Tuesday, back here in Scotland, the Cuckoos in the Nest demand a review of the Scottish Government's funding under the Growth Accelerator model. So what's the Growth Accelerator model, I hear you ask? Well, the Scottish Government can't borrow, but councils can. So when it comes to new projects, obviously infrastructure is required, and the councils borrow money to put in that infrastructure. So far the funding scheme has been used by Dundee Waterfront and the New St James's Centre in Edinburgh. The councils paid for the infrastructure to come in. Now, there are criteria in order to get that money back after Scottish Government. And that is that the economic growth must happen in the area where the councils have borrowed money to put in the infrastructure, and that the amount of corporation tax or business tax being collected must go up, and the amount of employment in the area must go up. Now, because of the last couple of years of COVID, the Scottish Government has been making the payments to Dundee Council and to Edinburgh Council for the infrastructure, for the money they borrowed for infrastructure for these two new projects. The Cuckoos in the Nest are going after chumps. The Scottish Government says the funding was paid, the money was paid out under emergency legislation because of COVID, but the Cuckoos want an inquiry. So there you go. The real reason why we have this situation, folks, is because the Scottish Government can't borrow, but the local councils can. So what the local council do is they borrow, and if they meet the criteria, the Scottish Government makes the payments on what they borrowed. There you go. That's how wacky it is to be a colony. In the colony of Scotland, the Scottish Government can't borrow, but the local councils can. Mental. Right, moving on to this morning, but first the Supreme Court ruling, then we'll get to the rags. Okay, this is the bit you've all been waiting for, I suppose. On the Supreme Court ruling, now I've watched it back a couple of times and I'm going to get full transcript and we'll get it a wee bit more. But on the Supreme Court ruling, it would appear that the Labour Party stole the Scottish people's sovereignty in the 1998 Scotland Act, as was pointed out by the Supreme Court justices. Okay, now, the trap was laid by Labour, and I'm afraid Alex Salmond and the SNP, that's my party, walked right into it when they agreed to Section 30 order. You see, the 1998 Scotland Act reserves the treaty between Scotland and England to the Westminster Parliament. Agreeing that Section 30 order, as I've said before, ratified that act, which none of us and the Scottish National Party have ever really recognised, because we voted for Home Rule and they decided what Home Rule would be. And the Labour Party, in writing the 1998 Scotland Act, stole the sovereignty of the people of Scotland, because the Treaty of England and Scotland and England was reserved to Westminster, and Westminster's sovereignty over Scotland is how the Supreme Court judges actually described it. The Supreme Court judges also said that the right to self-determination doesn't apply to Scotland because we are not oppressed or occupied by foreign forces. I beg to differ. If you voted consistently and democratically to have a mandate played out, and it's denied by another country or another parliament, that is oppression. Telling people that they can't have a say in their own future is oppression. As to the Supreme Court's judgment that the people of Scotland have access to government for economic and cultural growth, wrong again. Economic levers are all held in Westminster except for one, income tax, and we are culturally oppressed when we are not allowed to express a view on ourselves. The crap that came out of the Supreme Court this morning was gobsmacking. If you deny a person a say on their own future, that is by its very definition oppression. Sure, you were no fucked. One door shuts and another door opens. But the ruling of the court was just not, it was nonsensical. As was the ruling of the court when we wanted to embed the rights of the child into Scottish law under the UN Charter. Their thing there was that the Westminster Parliament wouldn't be able to legislate for children in Scotland without considering the children of Scotland's rights. That is oppression. You oppress the rights of Scottish children. Why is it with these Supreme Court fucking justices? Are you stupid or corrupt? Wow. If I was to deny Sarah a voice in our relationship, that would be oppression. I would be in court. I would be getting charged with a controlling conduct and oppressing her free will. But let's get back to the duplicity of the English Labour Party in Scotland. The 1998 Scotland Act reserved the Treaty of the Union of Scotland and England to England and the English Parliament. As to the claim about having democratic access to government, 59 MPs versus 550 MPs isn't democratic. That's what we call the democratic deficit. The Supreme Court judges were talking out their arses. But the duplicity here was on the Labour Party. And I will never forgive them. And if anybody else in Scotland forgives them, then there are some sick fucking puppies in our land. What do they call people who like to be oppressed? Fucking gimps. So, the Supreme Court ruling this morning was a bag of pish. A pile of pish. If you deny somebody a voice on their own future, by its very definition, that is oppression. The people of Scotland have voted 5 times now for an independence referendum since the last one. It's been denied consistently. That's oppression. It's also no access to democracy. It means that the democracy here in Scotland doesn't mean nothing. Not a thing. Power devolved is power reserved. All that's left for them to do now is to shut the Scottish Parliament, and that's where we're going. Why are we going in that direction? Well, England's fucking broke. It's squandered every fucking penny that the people of Scotland have, and they intend to take what last of the resources we have to finance their fucking pissing about and producing nothing except for lazy skivers. Lazy skivers who throw the life out of the countries round about them because they can't afford to stand on their own 2 fucking feet. And they've got a cheek to call the rest is too wee, too poor, too stupid. Scotland's got a balance of trade surplus. Therefore, Scotland doesn't have a deficit. England's got a massive balance of trade deficit because they produce fuck all. Not even the food they eat or the clothes in their back. They're a useless people. An unproductive people. A parasite which has raped the world. But that's generalising. We could take it and say it was the English elite that did it. It wasn't, it was a fucking 4 lot of tuggers and they're still doing it. Non-productive. Even the plants that are doing that road. The plants that are doing that road don't even belong to the people of England. Nothing. Let's take the Grimsby plant, which has just been shut down because of Brexit. 200 jobs gone. Owned in Iceland, that one. Or the car manufacturing plants in England. Not one of them's English. The steel manufacturers in the UK, none of them are English or Scottish. Everything's been sold and outsourced. The only thing that English people actually provide is professional services, and nobody needs their fucking professional services anymore. None. So, England's parasitic relationship with Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland goes on. They continue to suck the life for our duties and deny us a voice on our own. Now, the English people, they might not think that way. The English people might be quite supportive of the idea of self-determination in Scotland. But they voted for the fuckers down there. They voted for all the governments we've had for as long as I've been alive. Scotland hasn't had a say in it. Never. And now we're told our voices with democracy don't matter. Right, that's the Supreme Court judgment. Let's go and see what the papers are going to say this morning. Right, Scottish papers, Indy Ref 2 Judgment Day, and a real nightmare. It's a huge day for Scotland. Aye, it was. We just found out we're a colony. The Herald has young renters moved back home amid soaring costs. Well, you know, that's the Tories for you. The Times has big rise in gambling addiction. Well, when people are poor and they've only got a couple of pence and they need a couple of pounds, some of them are stupid enough to go and try and win that. The Scotsman, ferries fiasco, workers say McCall tenure broke yard. So apparently the ferry fiasco wasn't the Scottish government according to the workers, it was McCall. Right, the Scottish Daily Fail, the right-wing gammon loony rag. Now unions plot their nightmare before Christmas. People taking a stand to get a decent standard of working conditions and wages are to be portrayed as extremists. The other right-wing loony knuckle-draggers rag, the Daily Express. Unions inflict Christmas strike misery. No, they don't. Employers inflict Christmas strike misery because they won't come to the table, they won't sit down, they won't negotiate, and they won't get to a decent settlement with the people. The Metro has its Mick Grinch. So, there you go. RMT boss Mick Lynch has to be demonised because his members are standing up for their rights and their jobs and their terms and conditions. Pie's only one element in their argument. In fact, their argument is a strong one, actually. What the people that run the railways down that road want to do is they want to shut all the ticket offices, making stations unsafe for vulnerable people, and they want to half the maintenance teams, meaning the railways will run dangerously. The Eye has insulted teachers go ahead with strike, so the teachers feel insulted at a 6.5% pay offer. That's cool. I have to agree with them. They need 10%, at least 10%. Inflation's just hit 13%. But there is no money in the Scottish government's coffers. None. And Westminster doesn't give a shite about Scotland or our views. The Daily Telegraph has schools close as teachers walk out. They say can't argue with that. The teachers deserve better. But, you know, in 2014, some idiots in Scotland voted no to create a magic money faking tree. The Rancid murder suspect on the run. And what's the Star go for his day? Ruling an attack on LGBTQ plus people. Xander's armband anger at FIFA. And Xander Murray, the first Scottish senior footballer to come out as gay, has condemned FIFA's ban on players wearing a pro-inclusivity armband at the World Cup. Murray says the ruling on the One Love symbol is a direct attack on the LGBTQ community. So there you go. A rally at the World Cup where LGBT rights. Well, it's as good a platform as any to have these discussions. Right, folks, that's what I have for you this morning. As I say, the Labour Party, when we voted for Home Rule, or devolution, as they were calling it. And in 1997, the Labour Party then put the Scotland Act in place, and in doing that, reserved the Treaty of the Union between Scotland and England to the Westminster Parliament. The people of Scotland weren't given a say in what was in the 1998 Scotland Act. That's why I said it never recognised it. That's why I was angry when Section 30 order was agreed, because that was recognising Westminster's sovereignty over the people of Scotland, as the Supreme Court judges said. Now, don't forget Labour Scotland seabed grab. You're absolutely right there, Mark. Now, I'm sorry about getting about that again. I'm sorry we're going to be rant at the parasitic people of England, because it's not really the people. Although you can say by extension it is the people, because they keep voting for these muppets. But what happened this morning was a disgrace, and the spirited reasons given for it must be challengeable. Even in that court, it must be challengeable. Because to say the people of Scotland are not oppressed when they've been denied a voice in their future since 2017 is nuts. To say the people of Scotland are not oppressed when they're not allowed a voice or a say on their future is nuts, because that's the very definition of oppression. The Scottish Government's decided a general election for Scottish independence. Well, it makes it much more difficult. The first past the post system. And as has been pointed out in the press this morning, if Labour become a viable alternative for different government, then what choice do they have? The choice is to hold a Scottish parliamentary election where all the people of Scotland have a say. Anyway, I'll be in Edinburgh tonight. This doesn't get marked, it doesn't get passed without being marked. I want all you people to be at one of the protests across Scotland today. It has to be a massive turnout. It won't be. And it'll be taken, if it's not a massive turnout, that the people of Scotland really don't give a shite about their future. The fight goes on. Okay, the usual stuff. The campaign's still on. No matter what the Supreme Court says, keep your eyes on the prize. Learn your how you gonies and get out there and win hearts and minds. This is a day that the Supreme Court and England will regret. Simple as that. This might have lengthened the amount of time it's going to take to get where we're going, but we're still going there. 72% of our children want it. And if I was Nicola Sturgeon, I'd have turned around to the Supreme Court judges today, anti-Westminster. I don't give a fuck what you've got to say. I don't give a fuck about your Scotland Act. We're going to do it anyway. Because we are a people in a country and you're no sovereign in ours. Anyway, the usual stuff. All right, support the independent media, support Broadcasting Scotland, Independence Live, Indie Live Radio, Caledon Media, Truth Radio, iScot Magazine, and an national newspaper. And if you've got a crowdfunder on the go, throw a couple of pennies in the pot, if you can. And follow the last of the guidance on the virus. Okay, that's me for the day. I'll see you guys in Edinburgh tonight, where David and I will live stream a bit, and we'll get the reaction of the people. Okay. So watch out for those of you that can't make it out, watch out for the live stream for Edinburgh tonight. Catch you guys later.